believer. I believe in fate, which led my sweetie to set up his yoga mat next to mine. I believe in karma, although I do think there's a little bit of a backlog, and karma has some work to do. Feng Shui, tarot cards, astrology. I'm an Aquarius with a Leo rising. I believe it all. And I believe in ghosts. And after my story, you might too. So I met my good friend Laura about 25 years ago when I started working at AOL. She was my boss, and we hit it off immediately. We were both young and married with no kids, similar values. Some people say we kind of look alike. We're both blonde, shocker, in Loudoun County, I know. And even our mothers were similar. Both of our mothers were nurses. They were both blonde, and they were both tough as nails. And we both were super close to our moms. My life and Laura's traveled parallel paths. She had her first child, Tyler, and 6 months later, I had my daughter, Ruby. I got laid off from AOL. I went back, and we got laid off together. And I got divorced, and then she got divorced, and then we both found love again. And then in August of 2010, I got a devastating call from Laura. Her mother had been diagnosed with extremely aggressive pancreatic cancer. And I was heartbroken for her. 6 months later, my mother was diagnosed with gallbladder cancer. Both of these are extremely aggressive, nasty cancers. 2 months after my mother was diagnosed, Laura's mother passed away. And I remember very vividly going to the funeral, and this beautiful church in the country, Laura gave a heartfelt eulogy and the slideshow of photographs, very similar to the photos of my own mother, black and white childhood photos, her nursing graduation photo with the nurse's cap, and a lot of photos of us together. And it felt like foreshadowing of what was to come for me. 6 months later, my mother died at 66. And something they don't tell you, something I didn't realize when my mom was alive, was that she was my buffer between me and the world. She was always in my corner. And when she died, I felt alone, and the word that kept coming to mind was unmoored. And somehow I had become the matriarch. It just seemed unreal. So a few years pass, and another friend of mine who knows I'm really into this woo-woo stuff asked me if I wanted to go to a spiritual mediums group read. And of course I did. I jumped at it. I jumped at the chance. That's where a medium has a group of like 8 to 10 people in the room, and you don't necessarily get read. She kind of cherry picks. But I jumped at the chance. So we go and we get to the address, and it's in an office park. I was like, this was not what I was envisioning. I was thinking like old-timey mansion with like, big knocker on the door and velvet curtains and lace tablecloths, and this was more like a pleasant but sterile therapist's office. So we walk in, and they're mingling, because we're a little late, so the guests are mingling with the medium, and she whips her head when I walk into the room and looks at me, and she says, "You are surrounded by spiritual energy tonight." And I wasn't super shocked to hear that, because I'd actually heard that before. At a random rest stop, someone told me that I had angels around me and that I was on the wrong path. And my now husband would say the reason he set up his yoga mat next to me was because of my energy. So I was like, okay, cool. So we walk in, and there's a table in the center that's like a wooden table with a bunch of chairs and some chairs to the side. And because we're late, we didn't get a seat at the table. And so we're kind of off to the side, and I think to myself, oh, well, now I'm not going to get read, like line of sight is somehow important to this person who connects with spirits. But she gets started, she lights a candle, she dims the lights, and she says a little something, and then she turns to me and starts with me. And she's like, she starts describing the presence, and I'm just hoping it's my mom and that I can connect with her. And so she says, okay, it's a feminine energy. So I'm like, awesome, check. Very nurturing, caring, motherly energy, check, check. She's, it's a beautiful light, and check, check, check. And then she sees horses. Excuse me? Horses? I don't have any connection to horses, nor do my mother, so then I'm kind of racking my brain trying to figure out what's the connection, and then it hits me. I don't have a connection to horses, but Lara and her mother did. They had a farm, they had multiple horses, they rode daily, they competed together, and I realize it's not my mother in the room, but it's Lara's. So the medium goes on to say how the spirit is very nervous, very worried, very upset. Goes on for minutes about this, talks about flashing lights, and I'm just taking notes. And so we wrap up, and I call Lara the next morning, and I tell her all this, and I'm like, you're not going to believe this. I think your mom was in the room, and I tell her about the flashing lights and the horses, and she says, she's quiet for a few moments, and she says, Koren, I'm in the hospital. I was taken by ambulance, flashing lights, yesterday because my appendix burst, and I had to have an emergency appendectomy. Oh, and Lara's fine. One appendix lighter, but she's fine. And could that all have been coincidence? Sure. But I choose to believe that Lara's mom was in the room that day, because that means that my mother could have been. She could be here tonight. She could be anywhere. And so I look for her, and I see her in the mirror when I smile, and the lines form around my eyes, in my daughter, in cardinals. I hear her in the weird expressions I make and the sounds I make when I get in the car. And inevitably, every time when I go in the grocery store, an American Pie by Don McLean is on. What is that all about? I get whiffs of her perfume. And when I'm walking my dogs in the morning and the sun hits my face, that's when I know I'm not alone. I'm not unmoored. I'm surrounded. She's always with me. So do I believe in ghosts? I do. But I also believe in the bonds of friendship and grief. But more than anything, I believe in the transcendence of a mother's love. Thank you.